Shut up and sit down.
This is Off the Walk.
For some of our listeners who don't know yet, or maybe have missed it, we had a conversation about mental health on episode 26. If you haven't listened to it, please do. And one issue that came up was how it seemed that women, more so than men, had the ability to create a safe space among them where they could open up to each other and, share their emotions and feelings. Versus the men who, even among close friends, I would say it doesn't really happen. Well, we have someone here today, Andy Nguyen, who deals specifically with men's mental wellness from his nonprofit, Kings of Hearts. And through this organization, he helps men open up by creating a safe space for them to talk. Because at the end of the day, men have issues too, but for some reason, whether it be society, media, or whatever, I'd say it's harder for us to talk about it. So Andy, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, you guys. Thanks for having me. And I always take up the opportunity to have this type of conversation. It's just a dialogue that we need to have more of. So thank you, guys.
Oh, yes, for sure. Especially after we had our other conversation on mental health. From there, we decided we need to find someone to focus on, us too, men's mental health. And so that's why,
Yep.
I guess my first point here is, or my first kind of question here is like, Kings of Hearts, this name is legit. Where did you come up with Kings of Hearts, and what prompted you to start this?
Yeah, man. I'll start with, before I get into the name, I'll start with how it all started.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, it started by accident, to be honest. It was myself and 3 other friends. It was meant to be us gathering once a week to talk about business, so more like a business mastermind. And what ended up happening on our very first call, where we all got together, it was at my previous company's little office space. And we got there with the intention to talk about business. Everyone gets to share. One of the guys, he went through something rough in his life. Like, he was not emotionally fully there to actually talk about business. And we can tell he was off. And he really opened up. He was like, guys, like, I can't show up fully for the business intention of today. I got something really heavy going on in my life right now. And it really prompted us to hold space for the guy. You were just mentioning about how women hold space so well. And for guys, I feel like that's an area of improvement for us. But it just kind of happened so naturally that we're like, hey, let's hold space for this guy. We didn't know what it was going to look like. He was just going through a really rough time. And the gift that kind of was birthed out of that was what he was going through. Everyone in the room resonated with it at some level. And I think it was beautiful too, because we were all close friends. So, there wasn't like a bunch of strangers in the room. We're all close friends. So we really sat and we really listened to him without needing to fix him, without needing to solve a problem. The man just was feeling heavy. He needed to feel it. He needed to share it. And that was it. And so moving forward, the Tuesdays following, we just didn't talk about business. We just went deeper. We talked about our insecurities. We talked about our shame. We talked about our guilt. We talked about where we're at in our life, what we regret. So we went really deep with conversations. And the funny thing is, because now looking back at it now, because we went so deep and we were so consistent with meeting up and holding space for each other, the beautiful thing that kind of came out of that was our businesses actually benefited from us talking about our emotions and not holding things in, if that makes sense, right? So the whole purpose of having a business mastermind was totally fulfilled, just in a whole different way. Fast forward like 6 months later, we got to a point where we had to ask ourselves this question. And the question was, if our lives, our relationships, our business, our mental health benefited so much from just a simple meeting once a week, every single Tuesday, How many guys out there are walking around looking for, yearning for this type of connection, and they don't even know it because we didn't know we needed it. You guys know what I mean? And so we're like, let's start something. Let's start something up. The name Kings of Hearts comes from the heart. So like heart, basically like speak from the heart, heart space. King being like, take the responsibility of our own power to make a difference in our lives, to be a king in our own lives. You know what I mean? So we kind of put those two things together and we got the Kings of Hearts. I'll stop there, but I want to hear what you guys think, because I feel like this may have maybe come up in your last podcast episode or something, you know?
Yeah, I'm, I give you guys mad props, because I think that is, to show that kind of vulnerability and coming together with good friends to be able to open up like that. I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever gone through that myself. And I feel like there's times where I needed that. And, to have that safe space to be able to, just open up and talk about your deepest feelings is just so powerful. So I give you mad props to just being able to do that and, being there for your friend. Because I have had instances where, my friends would just be like, yo, man up. Like, what are you crying about? This is not bad. And sometimes I feel like that's, I mean, you're looking for something else, right? You're looking for someone to just listen to you and hear you out and not just, judge you or whatnot. And I think it's just great. I think what you're doing, your organization, that is what a lot of us men do, what a lot of us men need, because often we just, same thing, right? It's just, okay, I guess I got to man up, right? Like, let's not burden people, right? And just deal with it. Just figure it out and deal with it. But really, I feel like sometimes we just need to open up, and that's our way of somewhat coping and dealing with these things.
Yeah, man. I hear you speaking, and like I remember back when I was like in my early 20s and I was going through a rough time. I remember my homies. They're like, let's just go drink. Let's just go out. Let's go. I'll buy you a shot, or I'll buy you some drinks, and let's just go and have some fun. And I think on the surface level, that sounds really good. Like they had good intentions of like, hey, let's just get Andy thinking about something else.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is like those things become numbing. It becomes a way to numb. It becomes a way to bypass or to ignore certain feelings, right? And so it's really interesting now that we hold these men's groups, whether it's with the Kings of Hearts or with some other organizations that I work with. There's no alcohol involved in these spaces. Like the container is tight. It is intentional. So,
yeah.
But thank you, Lance, for acknowledging that, man.
And for myself, I think the biggest thing that came out to me, Andy, when you were doing that intro to the Kings of Hearts was the fact that the whole listening thing, and you don't have to have an answer. Like you don't have to find they're not expecting you to find a solution to their problem or something. They're just expecting you to listen. And that's something that even I'm guilty of. Like when people talk to me about their problems and stuff, I try to find a solution. I don't know if it's just my way of thinking, but I want to help and I'm trying to find a solution, but I should just listen and just feel with them and not need to have something to be like, okay, well, you know what you should be doing? You should be doing this. It doesn't have to be like that, That's what stood out.
Yeah, man. I think one of the best things we can do, and this is like man or woman, when we're holding space for another person and they're sharing something vulnerable, it's just to look at them and be like, hey, I might not understand where you're coming from, but you let me know what you need.
Yeah.
What do you need? What do you need right now?
I think this is massive, because I give you props for listening to your friend and giving him that space, but I also give your friend props to opening up, because I think that is just so hard for some of us to just, say what's on our minds, say that, hey, look, I'm going through something, instead of, just being a man and go, yeah, no, I'm good. And just, hiding behind ourselves, because that sometimes is more detrimenting to us, because we're trying to have this facade that nothing's happening, I'm fine, I'm good, but in actuality, no, we need help, we want help, but we just don't know how to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's programming, like even with what Eric said, it's like it's kind of like second nature to respond with a solution. It's our programming, and it's also our programming to respond with "I'm okay" when I'm actually not okay.
Yeah. Why do you
Right.
think there's this stigma? How did this stigma all come about with mental health and men in your with your experience?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, and this is like me working in groups and running events and coaching guys one on one, and it's something that I've noticed just like digging in a man's past to support him. We found out like a lot of the programming, a lot of the wounding really comes from childhood, where he was not safe to express his emotion or just be who he is, and a lot of the times that's the old generation and how they were raised.
Yeah.
It becomes a generation. It's like generational masculinity, right? It's like our father was raised a certain way, or even our mothers were told a story about how men should be, right? And so they pass that and they project that onto us. And so I can only use my example the best. It's like when I grew up, whenever I cried, my mom's like, she wouldn't discipline me for it, but she would say, "Hey, stop crying.
Yeah.
It's not appropriate for you to cry."
Yeah.
And like you guys, like, have you guys ever heard of this term called death by a million paper cuts?
Yes, I've heard of that term.
Yeah,
I've heard,
it's like,
I don't know what it means. What does it mean?
yeah, it basically means like it's not one big thing that crushes us. It's an accumulation of small things, right? And so throughout our childhood, we can't remember this. We can't recall our entire childhood. There were probably so many instances where micro instances where we were told that it was not okay to express our emotion, and it can come in many forms. And so there is a subconscious programming for boys growing up, and if we're talking like Asian boys too, like we're like the three of us were Asian guys, like growing up, man, there was no space for that.
No,
There was no space for that.
not at all. And you know what? There's a funny story. Like, I have children, and my friends have children, and I see this a lot too, right? It's just these kind of, like you say, these like maybe it's a part of us. We're not subconsciously conscious of what we are doing or whatnot, but I hear it all the time, right? Boys don't cry, right? Come on, be strong. Boys don't cry, and and often I see sometimes, friends, their kids, oh, he's okay. He's a boy, right? Maybe he falls and he, hurts himself or something. And I often see this, right? It's just, oh, don't worry. He's a boy. That's how he's going to have to learn. He's just going to have to man up, right? And that's, that's going to make him stronger, right? And that's that. I think you're right? That's that kind of mentality that we've been drilling down to our kids, and they're now thinking, yeah, well, this is how it is. My dad said, no, I can't cry. I don't, we don't talk about feelings. I gotta man up. If I get hurt, I gotta suck it up, right? Bumps and bruises, like that kind of, from the get-go, we learn to be like, okay, don't cry, right? It's just a cut, no big deal. You're a guy. But if it's a little girl, all of a sudden dads are all running to them, right? And they're going, are you okay? Oh, what's going on? What can I do? But, I think that's a good conversation to have with everyone, is to open us up, to go, okay, hey guys, this is maybe the reason why some of us men, we can't talk about things, because we've been, somehow cultivated to be, this person that should be emotionless somewhat, right?
Yeah, man. And I've sat in a circle with men before many times, and there was like specific exercises that we would facilitate for these guys around vulnerability. And we would go around the circle, and guys would be sharing things about their lives that they've never shared before.
Mhm.
And they honestly thought that they were going to go to the grave with these things that they were sharing. It was just so scary for them to reveal that part of themselves. And what we get them to do is we get them to share, and then we get them to pause for a second after the man shares, and he gets to just be with what he just vulnerably exposed or revealed. And then we ask the rest of the men around the circle, who here has experienced something similar? And then there'd be like 6, 7, 8, 9 hands raised. How healing is that for a man to think that he was going to go to his grave,
Yeah.
thinking that he was the only one going through that thing, when now he looks around the room and there's 5, 6, 7 guys who have put their hand up and said, me too,
Yes.
me too.
That's so powerful, right? I mean, to think this whole time you were going through it by yourself, that you were the different guy, right? That, you couldn't take it, but, and you thinking like every other man's probably just taking it like a man, but instead realizing, wow, no, everybody's going through this or gone through this. I mean, that is some powerful stuff, man. Powerful stuff.
Yeah. To have in a group setting too, to have the man come out, kind of get that heavy burden off his shoulder and be able to just share it, that would probably, I don't even want to imagine the wave of emotions that he must have been feeling when that happened. That's amazing. And I totally agree with the whole, you grow up and it's society, generation after generation, we're taught for men not to show our feelings, not to show our emotions. It's in films and stuff. Everybody, all the guys are all portrayed as strong, hard, emotionless, beings. And, and you wonder why, when you talk to girls are trying to, when they're dating with guys and they're asking them, why don't you share your emotions and feelings with me or something? And you wonder why. It's because the guys have been conditioned since birth to not share anything. So I can totally relate to that. And wow,
well, it's really interesting to see how times have progressed as well. Like there's a spectrum, and guys fall on that spectrum. So on one end of the spectrum, it's that rigid man who is, can come off very stoic or emotionless. And then nowadays there are also a lot of very sensitive men, and they're on the other end of the spectrum where they're exposing a lot, sometimes too much, right?
Too much.
And it really is. And if we're talking about it in like a romantic relationship, for example, and sometimes men treat their partners as if they're his therapist or something, and that's a lot. That's a lot to carry on, to take on as a partner. Like our female partners, they want to see our vulnerability. They don't need to process all of it with us. There are so many different resources. There are so many different ways, so many different arenas we can bring that stuff to, So like there is like on one spectrum, again, there's this rigid man, but on the other end now there's also this sensitive guy, right? And so the thing is like we're trying to teach guys how to access what part of themselves at what time. There's a time and place for everything is kind of the mentality we take on. So
that's pretty good, because I mean I think I talk to my wife a lot and I treat her as a therapist, but she's like, man, listen, I don't give a crap about you. No, I know she's been really good. I mean, I can definitely see what you're talking about is, sometimes maybe, of course we want to always share everything with our partners, in our lives, but sometimes they might not be the best fit for what we're trying to look for, right? And so I think having organizations like yourself and other types of organizations or support groups, it may be something better, because I know, sometimes, like you say, right, we sit there, and if we're sit with a bunch of guys, it's a little bit different than if you're sitting there with your wife or your girlfriend or something like that, or your partner, and talking about it, where we almost become somebody different when we're sitting in different groups, right? So if you're sitting in a group where maybe you don't know everybody, it's a little bit easier to open up. And I guess if you're a person that opens up regardless, then it might not be too hard for you to open up anyways. But yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about, Andy.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask that question too. Is that the reason why your organization it's focused solely on men? Because I mean, when you started this, you could have had the option to do both men and women, but perhaps in a say in a group setting, if men were there, but there was also women, they may not be as. Would you say that maybe they won't be as open, or they won't be as vulnerable as if it was just all men and they know that it's all the same? You know?
Yeah, yeah. It's there. There is. So I'll give a little bit of context first around like Kings of Hearts. So Kings of Hearts, we're focused on men's mental health, and then our events kind of are categorized into two places. There are events that are just men. There are like experiences for just men, and then there are also experiences for both. I want to kind of hit home on that because the perspective of women is crucial in healing the masculine. And so we need both. However, yes, now I'm going to address the other part of your question, Eric, around does it affect it when there's a woman in the room? For sure, yeah. I think I don't know how he said it. One of my mentors, his name is Phil. He's like, if there's a room full of women and you throw a man in there, one man in the room, they might not even notice him. Okay?
Yeah.
But if you have a room full of men and you allow one woman to walk in, heads start to turn.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is just the truth. And I think that's just our human nature. We can't bypass that. I think that's just our human nature. That and it's not a I don't want to label it it's a good thing or bad thing or better or worse or anything like that. It's just kind of what it is, you know, and we get to work with that a little bit. And that's why it's so important for men to have both, to have a space where there's women there so they can hear the impacts of masculinity and of modern day manhood and the impacts it has on women, because that could also be quite motivating for a man to then inquire and look deeper and reflect on his behavior in his life, right? What impact has it done on women? How does it make women feel? And it might not even be his impact, but it could be a fellow brother, right? So yeah, like on one sense, very important to have women speaking and telling their stories and collaborating with them on this initiative of men's mental health. And on the other end, it's always the and factor. And we got to get guys together with just men, and we all got to sit around a circle and have a really strong intention with no alcohol and just go deeper. We just need more of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to dial it back a bit and start with something like, you know, how do you, you know, say for example, someone, you know, like someone that hasn't experienced that, or they think that they need mental kind of support. What are some like of this key signs that we should be aware of, right? That it's like, okay, like, you know, like let's use me for example. Like I think things are good and whatnot. You know, I don't think I need any help, but there could be some deeper things that are happening to me that I don't realize. Maybe, you know, I don't know, some microaggressions towards the family or something like that, and I'm not realizing it. But what are there some kind of key you know, signs to showing that maybe I should be looking at myself, maybe I need to, you know, because I don't know what it means if for the first time I've never experienced something and I've never gone to these groups and I don't know what it is. What would your advice, you know, be, or like some of the signs would be to look for in yourself?
You know, like I think we all experience at some level loneliness, you know, and I think that a lot of the times we don't want to admit that. I think that's a scary thing to admit.
Yeah.
But if you feel a little bit lonely, or you feel like, you know, even if there's like an inkling of something missing in your life, I would say that the first thing that you could really touch on is, what is my community like right now? What is my community like? And I think that's a good first sign. It's like when you have certain feelings and you're like, you're just in your own mind about it. I would say, hey, get more curious about that feeling that you just had instead of just brushing it off.
Mm-hmm.
Get more curious about it. Who can you talk to about it? Are there communities out there that talk about this feeling or this experience? I want to put it that way. Mm-hmm. So I would say like that's a really good starting point, you know, and like if it's really bad, you know, like, you know, if you're going through like a roller coaster ride, like one day you're extremely happy, the next day you're extremely sad, and like there's these extremes that you're like you're having, I would say like actually look into some therapy, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look into therapy, it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you. I always say you're getting curious about yourself, and is that a crime? Mm-hmm. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's not a crime. You're just getting curious about yourself, and you're reaching out to different types of resources to do that. You know, with Kings of Hearts, for example, like we promote. We don't just talk about mental health. We talk about this thing called mental wellness. Mm-hmm. And the analogy I'd like to use is like just going to physical training at the gym, right? Like ideally, we don't want to wait till we have heart disease before we walk in the gym. Ideally, we don't want to wait till we are diagnosed with diabetes or high blood pressure or something in order to start working out and eating right and cleaning that stuff up, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can we apply the same mentality with our emotional body, with our emotional health, right? It's like, do we need to wait for something to go wrong, a symptom, before we go and start flexing our mental and emotional muscles? The thing is, it's just a lot of people don't even know what that looks like, right? So then they don't even go there. So I would say like, yeah, there are signs, feel like there's a lot of feelings that you can inquire and get curious about, but also don't wait for a sign. Yeah. Don't wait for a sign until you prioritize and start taking a little bit of action around your mental health. Nothing has to be wrong. I really want to like hit home with that.
I agree with you. I mean, I look at it like you're saying, right? Let's be proactive, right? Like people are taking vitamins not because they're sick, because they want to be proactive. They want to, I want vitamin C. I want to keep my body healthy. And I think you're right. We got to look at mental health the same way. We got to be proactive. Yeah, Andy. So I had this other question here is, how do we bring awareness to men and mental health? How do you think there are some ideas that we can bring awareness to communities around us?
Yeah, I think a really great way to bring awareness, and I'm a simple guy, like the solution to, or the way forward is never, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be grandiose. I think a really good awareness piece is to, when you're engaging with a guy friend, a brother, a father, a son, a partner, just sit them down and just be like, how are you really? How are you really? I'm going to say that a lot of guys are waiting for that type of question. Again, whether they know it or not. That's really good awareness. It's really great awareness. Mm-hmm. Second piece, there are so many men's movements happening right now. So many different organizations, so many podcasts, so many coaches and leaders. There's somebody out there that's going to resonate with the man in your life or yourself when it comes to talking about feelings and emotions. And so start looking into really great resources. Like this episode, once it's launched, this is going to be a really great resource, or maybe even door-opening conversation for a lot of guys. That saying that I mentioned to you earlier, death by a million paper cuts, it can also work the other way around, of the positive spin on it, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, can we approach this mental health topic for men from small actions compounding to great change? Yeah. So I would say it's the small things. It's pick up that book, ask someone how they really are, look into some of those men's movements, and just start absorbing that information. And what'll end up happening is something is going to shift inside of you. You don't know when, you don't know how. That's okay. Something's going to shift inside of you, and you're going to feel a calling. You're going to feel a calling to go a bit deeper, and you're going to seek out the direction that fits you.
Yeah.
At least that's my vision, man. Like, that's my hope for men.
I totally agree, because, and you know, not many men out there ever really take the time as well to just sit by themselves and just shut everything off and just think about what's going on in their life, and just say to themselves, you know, spend like a 10-20 minutes just sitting there and just think about, like, is everything all right with my life right now? Am I, like Lance said, am I being microaggressive? Do I feel like I'm lashing out a lot? Is there something going on that's not making me sleep at night? And if you feel like from that something's not right, and that would be the time for you to be able to be proactive about, to seek some form of therapy. Or like you said, maybe you should also go listen to some podcasts like this episode, you know, see what issues are going on, and see if this should be addressed now, because if it's not addressed now, it's going to boil up, and the consequences later on that might be very, very bad, is what I'm going to say, right?
Yeah, I really love that you mentioned all that. It's like a pop can being shaken, right? Every time we swallow our emotions and not speak out about it, give that pop can another shake, and it's going to get to the point where it's going to, you know, we all know what happens to a pop can when it's shook, right? It explodes.
Yeah.
So we don't want to get there, right? You know, Lance, you said earlier, let's take a proactive approach to this. And so, like, there's so much resources out there, more than men can know.
I agree with you. And, you know, I myself, you know, just have been looking at mental health at you know, just a total different light. And, you know, I've been calling some of my friends up and, you know, just seeing how they're doing, and, you know, just making sure that, you know, telling your friends that awareness, right? Like, hey, look, I'm here. I'm willing to listen, you know, and just sit here and be a friend, and you can open up about it, you know. And, you know, for me, it's, you know, I've, you know, watched a lot of things happen in my life, and I know that there are friends out there that are going through, you know, some depressing times, some stressful times. And I think just knowing, and I'm glad, you know, I'm glad that we have things of technology now, like podcasts and YouTube channels and all of these different ways of getting these communities out there. Because, I mean, for me, back in my days, we didn't hear of any of this, right? I mean, newspaper, no. You know, I again, it was probably shunned upon if you were to talk about men talking about their feelings. It'd be like, you know, come on, you're a man, you can do better. But I'm really glad that there is, like you say, there's this big movement about men's mental health, because it is real, right? And, you know, I've had friends that have, you know, committed suicide, and you're just thinking, how bad was it? You know, what happened? How did it get to this part? And I think we, as people, we need to, you know, try to recognize some of that and just be there, like you say. Like, that's why I say I give you props to you, your friends, you know, to just sit there and listen and be that ear, so that people can vent. And like you say, we're not looking for solutions, but we're just looking to say that, look, someone's here with you. Even if it's just me listening to you, I'm here with you. I'm ready. If you need help, I will try to do what I can to help you. And I think that's really important. So good on you again.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and, you know, there's a ripple effect that happens when guys walk into a safe container where they're exposed and they start experiencing different things around their emotions, right? It becomes a ripple effect, because how the new way that these guys are being communicated to, that's what they're going to carry forward in their lives. So they're going to start talking to their kids with that level of awareness, with that level of sensitivity, and our kids are going to speak to their kids in such a way, hopefully too. And this is where we can begin to shift that narrative, right?
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, you know, there's, you know, on one end, there's so many like resources out there. We just said like podcasts, books, but why are the suicide rates, why do they keep going up for men? Why do they keep going up? And I would also say, like, you know, there's a lot of information out there, but it's only information when you keep it in your mind. It doesn't become wisdom until we act on it. You guys feel me? Like we have whatever we listen to on a podcast, whatever we read in a book or hear in a seminar, we have to learn ways to act on those things and start to integrate that into our life. Otherwise, it just stays in our mind and it never really drops down anything below that. And I think that's just a theory. You know, I've never really said that out loud before. So I thought maybe I'd just put that out there, you know, like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lance. I was just going to say to me, it's the communication. You have it all in your head. You're reading it from books, you're listening from podcasts, but I feel like you still have it all in your head. I feel like if you were to just communicate it out to people in a safe space, that stance alone just helps you breathe. You can take a deep breath from there and say, I've communicated out to somebody else, and it's not all in my head. I don't know, Lance, what about you? Like, I think to me, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's just it's just great. I think that we have so many channels now. And again, yes, at least it's consciously in our minds that we're talking about this and saying, hey, look, it's okay. It's okay to talk about your feelings. And instead of us three guys sitting here going, you know, man the F up, you know, come on, guys, don't be a pansy, right? And no one's saying, hey, look, it's okay, man. We're humans, right? We're human being. We have feelings and we should talk about it. If there's something bugging you, if you're not happy about something, and even, hey, you know what? Talk about the happiness too, right? Talk about what makes you happy, right? Talk about those emotions and be okay about that. So, you know, I think that's key, right? So, yeah. But
yeah, I love that. I think there's like a stigma that if men talk about their emotions or if they become vulnerable or sensitive, then they're less of something else. And I think that we gotta slap those guys up and tell them, like, yo, man, like, just because you just shared something vulnerable or you cried or something like that doesn't make you less than of anything. Yeah. If anything, you're becoming more whole.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think, like, again, I say, you know, for your friend to have courage to talk about their feelings, I think it takes much more of a man to talk about your feelings than a man that hides it, right? It takes that much more courage for you to do that, because it's easy hiding it. It's easy to just, you know, leave it behind and show nothing. I think that's easy, but to be sharing those and being vulnerable, that is hard for me, I think that's super hard for me. And I don't typically talk a lot about my emotions, but I think if I was given the chance more, I definitely would be talking about it. And, you know, thank God we have like a podcast like this to be able to share some of my own, you know, experiences, but definitely. And I think this should be, you know, a warming call to men that, hey, it's okay, guys. We can talk about these things now, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you guys a question, just out of curiosity? Can you guys recall an experience or something in your past where, like, specifically where you felt like you needed to express some emotion, but then it was just not safe to do so? Whether it was of your own narrative or someone around you saying, like, hey, that's not cool.
I mean, for myself, there was a point where, let's just say, like, everything was coming at me all at once, you know, and it just, for me, it wasn't that there was like the people around weren't right. It was just that there was no one around, you know? And so, and for me, I guess I just wanted to let it out, but because there was no one around, I just couldn't, I just kept it just bundled it all up in my head again. Like I can't like exactly remember all the little different, like you said, 1,000 little things that kind of like pushed up, but to me it hit up to a boiling point, and it was just tough for me. And eventually I did let it out to myself. So like there was no one around, but it was tough. Even when you're alone, it's tough. I don't know, from the way I grew up, which is basically just to be emotionless and just nothing. Like, so it's tough for me. It's still tough for me, you know?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think of myself as a pretty emotional guy. I do like talking about my feelings and stuff, but to find that safe space, right? With who? A lot of times, like you say, my friends did the same thing to me. Yo, let's go party then, man. You know, oh man, you broke up with that girl? Let's go, man. Let's go drink, man. We'll get messed up, and don't worry about it, right? Plenty of fish in the sea, right? You keep hearing that. But oftentimes, who do I end up running to? I end up running to, like, I'm lucky. My brother's always a good listener for me, but I end up running to some female friends because I feel like they're good listeners, right? And they'll listen to me. They're really into that part, right, where you're opening up to them, and that's where I kind of found some of my safe spaces back in the day, right, when I was going through times where you needed to talk with someone, because some of my friends were just unfortunately, right, again, I think it's not their fault. I'm not saying that that's who they are. It's just that it was the time then, right? It was just, hey man, this is what we're gonna do, because again, maybe that's what we just grew up learning, like, oh, that's how my dad did it with me. Just, I don't know, or maybe not my dad, but my friends, right? I went through bad times, so they just took me out, and I kind of felt okay. So I'm gonna do the same with you. So we just didn't have the ideas about, oh, let's sit down, have a coffee, let's talk, or go somewhere to have that safe space. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of safe space, so when you have your sessions, like, how does that session work? And like, how do you organize the sessions, and then what goes on in these sessions, and how do you kind of get new members who it's their first time and they're coming in with a large group of men? How do you get them to open up?
Yeah, so I'll speak specifically to Samurai Brotherhood, like the organization that I work with in leading men's groups, because that's probably the most consistent one that I have around getting men in groups. It's literally once a week, every single week. Mm-hmm. And so, and I love that you asked this question, because that's a really common one. It's like, so what happens in these groups? What happens in these circles? Like, what do you guys even do? Mm-hmm. So basically, like, are you talking about like when a man first joins, or like kind of on a week-to-week basis?
When a man first joins, for any of our listeners out there who are thinking of joining, that is, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So when a man first joins, it's quite intimidating. So I'll just say that, like, mm-hmm. to jump on a Zoom call or to be in an in-person group and look around the room and look at like 9, 10, 11 new faces, mm-hmm. men of all ages, right? It's intimidating. Acknowledge that feeling that you have. It's okay. Mm-hmm. You're right where you're supposed to be, and so what we do is we get him to talk a little bit. We do a little intro for him, and we get him to talk a little bit about himself, a little bit more on like the surface level. Okay. Who are you? Where are you from? Why? Like, what called you to this space? Like, why are you here? Like, mm-hmm. what part of your heart needed this that your mind maybe doesn't even understand yet? Mm-hmm. And then what do you bring? What do you bring to the group? This is also really important. It's like when a man comes into a group and we all sit around a circle once a week, it's a collaborative thing. It's not just about one guy or one or two guys, or there's no like speaker, you know what I mean? Like everyone here is on an even playing field. And so what do you bring to the group, you know, based on your own life experiences? What do you think you bring in? It's beautiful to watch a man express why he's here, what he needs to receive, and also to see a man begin to take ownership of his power, of what he can contribute to. Because on a micro level, when a man can begin to acknowledge his contribution to something small, like a relationship or a men's group, he can then begin to magnify that and start asking questions of how can I contribute to the world, right? And it's all connected. It's all connected, you know? And so we get him to talk a little bit about himself. And then the second part to that is he stops talking, and then we get the rest of the men to ask him questions. Now that's a powerful approach to ask questions. It sounds so simple, right? But you know, it's just guys asking questions to go one or two layers deeper. The thing about a men's group or a men's circle is everyone that sits around you is essentially a mirror for you. And perhaps this man that's sitting across from you can see something, just maybe based on his own pure curiosity, can see something in you that you can't see in yourself. So when he asks a question, and he's asking from that place of helping this other guy go deeper than he is currently at, I think that's beautiful, right? And so we get these guys to ask each other questions. And these guys are like, you know, the container, again, is tight. So it's meant to be deep, you know, like they know that they're here not to ask, hey, what'd you do last week? You know what I mean? You know, the guys are asking, what'd you eat last night? No, it's like, you know, it's more like, yo, man, like, if you were to die tomorrow, what's something that you would say to your kid?
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? Like, deep.
Yeah.
Deep. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just like, it's more like ask the question and then allow the man who's receiving the question to feel what's happening in his body. It's not even about the answer.
Yeah.
It's about what did that question trigger in you? Did you feel defensive? Did you feel stuck, like in your mind, trying to overanalyze the question? Did you feel hesitant? Did you feel a wall come up? Like that's the more important aspect of this work. Is it's not so much about the answer.
Yeah.
It's more about the experience that's actually happening in your body.
Man,
you know?
I love that. It's just like, you know, self-discovery, right? Like just finding out about yourself just by people asking you some of these deep questions, you know, and sometimes I think this is, you know, what life is about. It's just about discovering who you are, and you don't even know who you are until different experiences hit you. So that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
I still remember every girlfriend I've ever had always asked me that one question. If I fell in the ocean and your mom fell in the ocean, who would you say first? These are those questions where it's like, now I know where these deep questions come from. It's always hard, man. You find yourself when you answer that question.
So I mentioned, I love that too. So I mentioned to you guys earlier, like, you know, one thing that like an experience in a circle that a guy can have is just to go around the circle and share something vulnerable, right? So can I give some more context to that process or to that exercise?
Yeah, for sure.
It's quite powerful. Yeah. So basically what we do is every guy around the circle, you know, it's popcorn style. So it doesn't go in like specific order. Popcorn style being like, you feel called to share, you know? And the structure of that exercise is they complete a sentence stem. So basically guys are completing the sentence, literally the sentence. They're saying something that I don't want you to know about me is. Something I don't want you to know about me is. So basically they're kind of like going into the deep, dark, you know, archive of like, what's something that don't want people to see or know about me, and can I share that in a safe container right now? And when you stick to that structure, and guys, and you allow maybe like a 15 minutes just to keep going, it gets deep. It gets deep. Because at first it's sort of surface level-y, because guys are like, oh, I don't want to be the first one to share something deep. So it's like they share the truth though. Like, there's like the right hand is up beforehand, be like, you got to share the truth. You can't just make shit up. and you can't commit or confess to a crime or something here, But
Right.
there are boundaries to that process.
Yeah.
So guys understand, like, I got to speak truth, but it gets deep. It gets deep as you keep going. Something I don't want you to know about me is fill in the blank.
When guys answer, there's always like the surface answer, and then there's like a wall. There's like maybe like 5 tiers, 5 levels, and then maybe around you go back, maybe one other guy starts to go into a level 2, and then you're like, well, this guy's going to level 2. I gotta answer a little bit. Maybe by the end of the session, you're delving deep, eh? So that's a really good way to get, especially newcomers, to start opening up, because they're coming in with full guards. They're coming in with everything. They're not ready to share anything, right? I'm assuming. So
Yep. And even that exercise is probably not like right off the bat. When I lead a group, I'm quite mindful of, like, if a man is only 2 weeks in, like, we're not going to do that process quite yet. That one's a little bit more raw, The guys are pretty, they're feeling stuff in their chest and their body. Tears are flowing. Celebration as well, for sure. There's joy of like, yo, I just released some of that pressure valve, But again, like, for newbies, for new guys, it's like, just get in a group and just start talking about your life on a deeper level. It doesn't have to be revealing any secrets or anything. It's just, like, and even if a guy's quiet for like a month or 2 or 3, that's okay. He's just taking it in, some new guys they get hard on themselves because they're like, well, I haven't said much. I'm like, dude, man, you're exactly where you need to be, dude. If you feel quiet today, it's all good. You're here. You showed up. You showed up. That is more than half the battle,
Yeah, it's just crazy in my mind to know that a man can share more with a group of basically strangers, maybe after maybe several months, than they could share with friends that they've grown up with over a lifetime, just because of the different dynamic that's going on, right? It's just crazy, and
depth of connection knows no time. It doesn't, there's no time that you can put on depth. It's just, that's how, like, I run an online group. There's 10 of us. I've never met any of them. We've been like in person, like the guys are from all over the world. Never met any of them in person.
Yeah.
And we're tight. We're tight. And I know that when we do meet in person, because I've had that experience before of being in an online group for a year and then meeting these guys for the first time in person. It's incredible. It's incredible,
That's so awesome. So these kind of groups are I guess they're probably virtual now because of COVID. But are these groups happening all around the country, all around the world, everywhere? Awesome,
everywhere, dude. Yeah, like the group that I run every Tuesday morning. There's one guy in Russia, one guy in the UK, 2 guys in Florida, 2 guys in California, 1 guy in Texas, another guy in Pennsylvania, and I'm in Mexico.
Nice.
Like, it's, and 1 guy's on Vancouver Island.
Nice.
It's everywhere. Yeah. Man.
And like, is there costs for these kind of organization, or is it completely like?
Depends on the organization. Yes, some charge and some don't. I know that. So Kings of Hearts, we have a group that we run virtually twice a month. That one costs. It's like a 1 fee retainer.
Okay.
And it's basically a donation, actually, just to because we're a non-for-profit, the Kings of Hearts. And then the Samurai Brotherhood is a monthly membership. So it's like $100 a month. Yeah.
Awesome. I just feel like I want to be a part of some of this, because, it's just hard to find, like you say, right now, a safe space. And I've not come across anywhere where you can have a safe space to kind of talk about your emotions, right? And not, again, right? I think it's going to be hard. Don't get me wrong. I think, like you say, it's going to be intimidating. But definitely, I think if I can anyways go through that process, I think I can learn a thing or two for sure about myself.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we can exchange some links or something after. I could send you guys a bunch of stuff that you can also provide to your listeners too,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you, Andy, again for coming in. I'm not even going to lie that when you first did the intro there, I started tearing up a little. Straight up, when you were kind of going deep, you were going deep in there, I actually was like, they didn't fall down, but they were rumbling up in the eyeballs up there. You know what I'm saying? So
the tears are rumbling. I love it, man. Thank you so much, dude. Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I like to stop for a second and like acknowledge a man for that, because sometimes we can quickly sometimes even wrap those little things around with a little bit of humor, which is, I think, good looking at it from a distance. But when we quickly write things off with humor, we're not fully acknowledging for what it actually is. So, dude, like, I acknowledge you, man, for those tears that were rumbling in your eyes, like that were just there. I truly acknowledge that.
Yeah, it was, and I hope that our listeners out there, they felt the men out there, women too. They heard your words and they can feel like that there are tools out there and there are groups out there. Because I'm going to be honest, actually, before this episode and I met up with you and found you, I actually didn't know that there were specifically men's groups out there. I don't know about you, Lance, but I actually did not know there were. So to find you, like, your group, your organization here is awesome. And for our listeners out there, like, if they want to get in touch and they want to find out more information, like, how would you suggest they get in touch? Like, just go to your email address. What would be the email address?
Yeah, the email address, honestly, you can reach out to me directly. Like, I really want to promote like an open door policy here, right? So my email address is andy@kingshearts, both plural.com. So andy@kingshearts.com. And just reach out to me. The other way would be to jump on our social medias. There's the Kings of Hearts for the Kings of Hearts. There's the Samurai Brotherhood, which is all one word. And for my own personal one is the Conscious Masculine.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you also host a podcast. Can you also give a little breakdown of what happens in your Kings of Hearts podcast as well?
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for bringing that up, man. It's a project that we started last year. It's still quite young. And essentially, we were just thinking about different platforms that we can continue to have this conversation. And we felt like a podcast was like perfect. It was myself and my business partner, Yanukwa. And we're like, let's just make this another safe space that we can continue this conversation and have people on and talk about specific topics that are applicable to the average modern day man, whether that's about his masculinity in terms of his body image, or maybe his masculinity in regards to how he shows up in sport and athletics growing up, or love. And we've even had female guests come on talking about the pain that they've been through in their life that was inflicted upon them due to men that were hurt, that just didn't know how to process. And if a man does not process, he will project, and that projection will look like violence, or will look like fill in the blank thing, right? So we get women on the podcast talking about their experiences too, because us men, we need to know the impact that our fellow brothers have made, their mistakes. We learn from those. And we also got to learn about what we're capable of. And we're capable of a lot of greatness, but we're also capable of a lot of hurt. And we need to be able to begin to take ownership of that, if you guys feel me. So our podcast is really about getting into those deeper conversations.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Andy, for sharing, your stories with us. And, again, thank you for, providing these safe space for men and for women. Because I'm definitely going to look you guys up and, hopefully get into one of these sessions here, because I definitely think that I would love something like that.
Yeah. Well, the next time we have an online event where we talk about a specific topic, we have both men and women in there. You guys got two passes on me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, thank you, and Andy. And for our listeners out there, when we post up the episode, I'm going to include all the links on our synopsis, our little blurb there on Spotify. And, for anybody else out there who also has topics they want to talk to us about, offthewalk.info@gmail.com. And you can follow us on Instagram at Off the Walk Podcast for any new episodes that we'll be releasing there. And finally, if you'd also like to give a little something to us to keep the lights going, you can for sure. You'll be able to find it on our link tree on our Instagram there. But until next time, come walk with us again. Thank you.
See ya, guys.